10 problems. So any 10 problems off of that worksheet was the assignment. Those of you who were here, anybody ask questions, which ones you want to see work?
Number 6.
Number 6. On every one of these, first thing I would do, and when we take the test, this is the way it's going to be set up over this stuff. Part of your test is going to be draw a triangle. Somebody help me out, what's the corners labeled on this triangle? Give me another sheet, there's one.
ST.
And what do they tell us?
Measure of angle T is 85. Little s is 4.3.
So little s, left, right, or bottom?
Right.
Okay, remember little s is across from big S. So you said it's what, how much?
4.3.
4.3.
And then little t is 8.2, which is the bottom.
That's the bottom, 8.2.
Yeah.
And on this one, we're trying to solve the triangle. Anytime we're trying to solve the triangle, that means we're finding all the missing parts. What's this side over here going to get labeled?
Little u.
Little u. So we're trying to find angle S, angle u, and little u, right? Those are 3 things that we're trying to find. We're going to use the law of sines. Remember, the law of sines just looks like this. Sine A over little a, sine angle B over little b, so on, so on. How are we going to set this up this time? Have your calculators out so you can help us. Every time you're going to do this. Sine, sine. Every single time. Which angle are we going to pick? So what goes here?
85.
85. What's it match up to?
8.2.
So that goes on bottom there. So you're just matching up this, the sine of this angle to the length of that side. Then apparently we're going to have to find an angle next, right?
Yeah.
Which angle you want to try to find?
S.
S. And we do that, so we're doing this one. The reason we do that is because we know the 4.3. The other way, we'd be out of luck. We don't know either part. So sine of angle S, and what goes on bottom? 4.3. Last time, we did the, just using the calculator way, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you guys want to go with? I think that's what you guys decided last time, wasn't it? So when we cross multiply here, watch this closely so you understand this. You just put the number out front and you can do 4.3 times the sine, ignore that, sine of 85 equals, when we cross multiply the other way, it's 8.2 times the sine of S, so that we don't have to write down all those decimals and everything every time. We're trying to get sine of S, we're trying to get that variable by itself. So what do you got to divide both sides by?
Sine of S, or 8.2.
8.2. So we're going to divide this side by 8.2, divide that side by 8.2. These over here are just going to cancel out. We're left with sine of S equals, and then you can type this into your calculator. Again, type in the top, just the way it is right there. So 4.3 times sine of 85, hit equals, and then hit that answer divided by 8.2. Anybody think that Branson's going to be confused here in a minute?
How many numbers do you want us to go out?
4.
0.5224.
Anybody else get that?
Yeah.
Then once you have that, is that our answer?
No.
No, we're trying to find angle S, right? So you got to hit what on your calculator? Second or shift. So you hit second or shift and then type in that 0.5224.
31.5.
And if we're doing an angle, we just want the nearest degree, so about what?
30.
32. So that's one of our answers, 32 degrees. So angle S right here is 32 degrees. Are we finished with that problem?
No. Oh, you go to the other way.
Now we gotta find the other angle and the other side, right? What's the easiest one to find next?
Bang.
The angle. How you gonna find the angle?
180 minus 117.
All right, so you add these two and subtract it from 180. What do you come up with?
63.
63. So that's that angle right there. So angle U is 63 degrees. Finished? No, we still have to find what?
Yeah, exactly.
The little u. So we do sine here, set up the law of sines again. I would probably stay with the angles and stuff I started with in this one. So sine 85 over what? 8.2. And then the other one, we gotta change it because now we're trying to find little u, so which angle do we wanna deal with?
63.
The one across from it, right? So sine of 63 over little u. Once you have that equation written down, last time when I was working with people and stuff, this is the part, you gotta do this. If you're not writing this down, if you're not writing down this equation to start with, you're gonna be lost. So those people that I was helping last time, they weren't writing it down. Oh, no, we'll write all that down. You're gonna be lost. If you don't write it out, you're gonna be lost. I'm trying to make it as short as possible by doing the calculator stuff here, but some things you just have to write down. When we cross multiply this way, you just say u times sine of 85 equals, what do you get when you cross multiply that way? Just write it down. What's it gonna say? Don't do it on your calculator, just
Sine 63 times equal to, or 8.2 times.
remember, you want the number out front, so 8.2 times the sine of
63.
63. Which side's the variable one?
The
Right.
left.
Or what?
Which one is it?
Left.
Left, the u is? So it's u times the sine of 85, so what are we gonna divide both sides by? Sine of 85. Don't just divide by 85. If you just divide by 85, is that gonna give you the same answer? No. Now this one, instead of having to do second and all that stuff because we're finding an angle, just type in this top part, 8.2 times the sine of 63. Hit equals, and then divide it by the sine of 85 and hit equals. And remember, we're finding a side this time, so we want to go out one decimal place. 7.3. Everybody get that? 7.3. Have we found every missing part in that triangle now? Next question. No others, just ready to turn it in?
No.
We do
2? Again, remember, I don't want to see the worksheet again. Everything's got to be on a separate sheet of paper. Number 2. Draw our triangle again. What's the letters this time? E, F, G. Now I'm sure somebody's going to ask, does it matter where E's at and F's at and G's at? Does it make any difference? Does E have to be over here on this side? No, it makes no difference. Just because I drew this triangle and it looks like an equilateral triangle, does that mean it is an equilateral triangle? No. Draw whatever kind of triangle you want. This works for all triangles. Don't go by what you draw though, because it's not right. So what did they tell us in number 2?
E equals 12.7.
So little e, where's little e? Left, right, or the bottom?
Right.
12.7 you said?
Yeah.
Remember, little e is across from big E. What next?
Angle B is 42.
Is Write that in there,
Angle F is 61.
write that in there.
Then we have to find the
Little f would be left or bottom?
bottom.
Bottom, put a little f down there. Could we find angle G real quick, if we wanted?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just add these two and subtract from 180, that'd give you angle G, and little g would be over here, but we apparently don't care about little g this time, so just find an F. Set up your law of sines, and every single time law of sines looks like this. Sine some angle over something, sine of some angle over something. What angle are we gonna pick first this time? Which angle do we actually know the angle and the side that matches up to it? So what goes up here? 42. What goes on the bottom? 12.7. Ignore that. Which other angle are we gonna pick? 61. What's it match up to? Little f. He's easy, Elizabeth. We cross multiply this way, you get 12.7 times the sine of 61, ignore that, equals, what do you get when you cross multiply the other way? F times the sine of 42. Which side is the variable on this time? On the right-hand side, we're multiplying f by the sine of 42, so what are we going to divide both sides by? Sine of 42, divide that by sine of 42, divide this by sine of 42. These two over here cancel out, and you're left with just f on that side. That's what, it's supposed to be an f. Left with just f on that side, that's what we're looking for. Do the top, hit equals, then divide that answer by sine of 42. What do you come up with?
16.6.
16.6, anybody else get that? Yes, no, maybe?
I didn't, but I don't think I did it right.
So let's try it again, make sure. 12.7 times sine of 61, hit equals,
I got it. 60.
then divide that by sine of 42, hit equals 16.6. Is that what we're going with, 16.6?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So how long is this side down here on this triangle? 16.6. Again, could we find the other angle on the other side if we wanted? Yeah, they didn't ask us to on this problem. Just on problems 6 through 13 there, did they want us to find all the missing parts? This one, they just wanted little f. Next question. One more. No others?
Can we do 8?
8. Problem 8, again. Draw a triangle. What's our letters on this triangle? STU again. Ignore that. What will they tell us this time on number 8?
Measure of angle U is 37.
That goes right there, okay.
Little t is 2.3.
Where's little t, left, right, or bottom?
Bottom.
It's across from big T, so 2.3, is that what you said?
2.3. And the measure of angle t is 17.
17 degrees there. What parts do we have to find if we're solving this whole triangle? What angle do we still need to find? Angle S, so that's one of our answers that we need. What sides do we have to find?
Little U.
Little u, which is over here, right?
Yeah.
And little s, which is right there. Ignore all that. So we're finding those things. Which one's the easiest one to find first?
Angle S.
Angle S. 37 plus 17, subtract that from 180.
Get 126.
126?
Yeah, I think so.
Ooh. What's wrong with 126? Not really wrong with it, but what's different?
It's above 90 degrees.
It's above 90 degrees, all right?
It just looks weird on
And
it.
with this, When we're using law of sines, that's all right. When we're doing sine, cosine, tangent, you couldn't have that, but now we can. That may change some stuff, and we'll talk about it as we go. So this angle's 126 degrees here. We set up law of sines, got sine there, pick me an angle. Which one do you know the angle and the side that's across from it?
2.
So, what's the angle?
17.
17, that goes on top, then what goes on bottom?
2.3.
2.3 on bottom. Now, the other one, it doesn't matter really which one we pick, you can pick whichever one you want. U, so if we pick U, that's sine of 37, and it matches up to what?
Oh, wait, no, you.
Little u. So that means this time we're gonna be finding little u. We cross multiply this way, what do you get?
U times the sine of 17.
U times the sine of 17, wish they wouldn't use letters like U. And then you cross multiply this way, what do you get?
2.3 times the sine of 37.
Which side's the variable on? Left, what's with it?
Sine 17.
So we divide both sides by the sine of 17, divide this side by the sine of 17, these cancel out, you're left with just little u equals, again, divide this, or I'm sorry, do this whole thing on top, 2.3 times the sine of 37, hit equals, and then divided by the sine of 17.
4.7.
Anybody else get 4.7?
Yeah.
Pen won't work. So little u right here is 4.7. Again, I said this last time, can we just use Pythagorean's theorem to find the other side?
Yeah. No.
Because it's not what kind of triangle?
A right triangle.
It's not a right triangle, so the Pythagorean's theorem doesn't work anymore. So to find the other side, we have to do law of sines again. Sine here, sine here. I'd probably stick with the first one here, sine of 17 over 2.3. That seemed to work out well last time. This time, which angle we're gonna pick?
Yes.
Instead of picking the 37, we're gonna pick what? 126. Because now we wanna find little s, right? So we wanna pick the angle across from it. That's a little s, it's not a 5. We cross multiply this way, what do you get when you cross multiply that way?
S times the sine of 17.
S times the sine of 17. Ignore that. Remember, you're sticking the number or the variable out in front because you don't want your calculator to see anything dumb because it won't understand it. What do you get when you cross multiply this way? 2.3 times the sine of 126. Which side's the variable on? Left, so we divide both sides by what? Sine of 17, these cancel out. These cancel out. We're left with just s on that side. It's 2.3 times the sine of 126, it equals. And then divide that by the sine of 17, and it equals.
6.4.
Anybody else get 6.4?
Yeah.
Somebody, real quick, just do sine of 126 on your calculator for me.
0.809.
Now do sine, or do cosine of 126.
Negative 0.5.
What? What did it start with?
Negative.
All right, so when we get to what we're gonna do today, when you have those obtuse angles, it messes, it doesn't mess anything up, but it makes it a negative, and then that, it'll still, everything will still work, it just looks different, all right? So that's when you're dealing with obtuse angles, things are gonna be a little different sometimes. Make sure your names are on those, put them in the tray up there. Again, I don't want the worksheet, just the stuff where you're you did your work and stuff on. Make sure you grab the notes from up there if you haven't already grabbed them. Once you have the notes, start filling in what you need to fill in. Law of cosines. Elizabeth, as much as I like you, law of cosines is a lot harder. Alright, so we need to focus here. Law of sines, not too bad. Law, I don't want to say it's a lot harder because your calculator will do a lot of the work for you. One of the methods. The other method, calculator doesn't do so much work for you, and that makes that one a little tougher.
So it's 2b to z.
So the law of cosine says a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c times the cosine of a.
Okay.
Once you get that written down, I'll start explaining. Looks like a harder formula. It's not really real difficult, but because you're just plugging in the numbers. If you're finding a side, it's pretty easy. If you're finding an angle, it's a little tougher. This says if you're looking for A, little a, or big A. So the first thing, right there on your notes, and I think part of this is on the next slide and stuff, and you're going to maybe write it down or whatever. But variable either has to go right there or right there. You can't have any variables in this equation, any spots other than those two. So if you're looking for an angle, you want your variable to be here on the right-hand side. If you're looking for a side, you want your variable to be on the left-hand side. Everything else in there we'll know the number for. So the variable's got to go in one of those two spots. The other thing, this says A, B, and C. It could have just as easily, and I used to list all this out and it just seemed to confuse people, so we won't do it. But if we had this triangle, NTH, instead of A, B, and C, we use NT and H. So it might look, your equation might look something like this. N squared equals T squared plus H squared minus 2 times T times H times the cosine of big N. So all those letters are just variables. It doesn't affect anything else.
I thought you said there can't be two variables.
Well, once we know the numbers.
Oh.
All right, so we'll have to know some of those numbers to do it. But this is just another way. It doesn't, all I'm saying here is labeling the triangle. It doesn't always have to be triangle ABC. Could be any letters.
So you said earlier it really doesn't matter with the way you list them? But it doesn't matter with this?
When we were drawing it,
Okay.
yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I'm not sure, what's the next part? Is that the next part?
Yeah.
Gotta make sure I got the right PowerPoint. When to use. So when to use, and you might want to put law of cosines up here. We had on the last set of notes, we had when to use the law of sines. This is when to use the law of cosines. So if you know all three sides, and you got, when we take a test over this stuff, probably next week, when we take a test over this stuff, you've got to know, hey, am I using law of sines or law of cosines. If they tell you all three sides, then you have to use the law of cosines. If they tell you two sides and the included angles, anybody remember from like side angle side what the included angle is?
The one in between.
It's the one in between the two sides. So if we know this side and this side, it's got to be the angle in between those two. So if we know that information, a side, then an angle, then a side, they go right in order that way, then you have to use the law of cosines. Now just looking at the formulas, I'm sure Mason would rather use which law? Sines probably, right? It was a little easier. So we only use the law of cosines if we absolutely have to. And then once we find one part of the triangle, if we're trying to solve the entire triangle, then we can jump back and use the law of sines again, instead of using the law of cosines. But if it's one of these two setups, we have to use the law of cosines first, then we can go back and use the law of sines. Remember, for law of sines, it was, if you knew an angle, let's say we knew that angle was 50 degrees, we knew this side was 10, and maybe we knew another angle, 20 degrees or something, I don't know. So if we knew that, we use law of sines. If we knew two angles and a side across, or from one of those angles, then we use law of sines. And the other setup was if we knew something like, if that was 50 maybe, and we knew this side was 10, this side was 12. If it was set up that way, then we use law of sines. So if you know two sides and the angle across from one of those sides, then you can use law of sines. So those two setups, law of sines, these two setups, law of cosines. There's no other way that the information could be given to you. You got to be able to use one of them. The ends of the formula, this is what I said at the beginning. One of the ends, I should have put one end, whether it's the left or the right, is where the variable goes. It's got to be the part you're looking for. Once you find an angle or a side, this is what I just said a second ago. Once you find an angle or a side, then I would probably switch back to the law of sines if you're still trying to find other parts. Now, I got Jacob setting up here, and every time I've taught this in the past, there's always 2 or 3 students, 4 students in the class that say, why not just use law of cosines? It's easier on this one. And that's fine. All right? When finding a side using the law of cosines, so this one, when finding a side, this is pretty easy. We're going to do an example and do a couple of problems this way. When finding a side, label the triangle. So just draw your triangle, label it, everything you need. Write out the formula with the side that you're finding on the far left. Plug everything in on the right of the equal sign into the calculator, and then take the square root of that answer. What was it? Just the top part you had to fill in. Write this down underneath that. That's why I left you space there. Draw this picture, write all the information down there. Again, notice I made it an equilateral triangle. Is that what it's supposed to be? No. It's just the easiest one I could put on my PowerPoint. go to label this triangle. What are we gonna label the corners? What goes here? What goes here? Tell me. Letter. A. Here. Here. Again, does it really matter which order we go in?
Yeah.
No, you probably want to stay in the same order that I'm in so you don't get confused maybe for now, but otherwise doesn't matter. Now, what can I fill in?
Little b, 14.
Little b, left, right, or bottom?
Bottom.
14. Then what?
Is 12.
Left or right? So that's over here.
And then big A is 62.
So angle A is 62, so we write that in there. Notice we have a side, another side, and then the angle that's in between those two sides. So that tells us we're using the law of cosine, which that sort of makes sense since that's what we're covering, right? This used A, B, and C. It didn't have to be A, B, and C, but that's the way I set it up this time. What are we trying to find? Little a, where's it? Put a little a in there. Now this one looks just like the formula just because I set it up that way. We're looking for little a, so that means over here on the left, we want little a all by itself in the formula. So a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2 times these two parts that are in here are always going to be the same as these two numbers right here in the formula. All right? So this is little b, this is little c. And then times the cosine. The other end out here has to be whatever this letter was except the big letter. So if this is little a, what goes out here?
62, which is
Big A. All right? Now we're going to start plugging in numbers. Do we know little a? That's what we're looking for. So that's our variable over there on that side all by itself. Do we know little b?
Yeah.
What was it?
14.
So 14 squared plus
12 squared.
12 squared minus 2 times, what do we put in for b right here?
14.
14, so b, that goes in right there again, times, what do we put in for c right there?
12.
So that goes right there, times cosine, what's angle A?
62.
So we put in 62 right there. Now grab your calculator, because I'm going to tell you how to punch this in. And you got to be careful with some calculators because of the parentheses. Because some of them put parentheses in for you, some of them don't, and then it will say error at the end because you didn't close or open a parenthesis or something. And so when I type this in, I would type it in all just like this. So type in 14 squared plus 12 squared, don't hit equals anywhere in this, minus 2 parenthesis 14, close the parenthesis, open a new parenthesis, 12, close that parenthesis, open a new parenthesis, cosine 62. Now here's where you have to be careful. If your calculator puts a parenthesis in right here, then you got to put a double parenthesis at the end. All right? So if it puts one in for you, then you got to put in a double one there at the end. And then hit equals.
182.25.
So you got that number. I don't even care what that number is. You got it right there on your calculator, right? That's not your answer. Because then the last thing we got to do to get a by itself, if we got a squared, what do you got to do to that number? Take the square root. So you're going to take the square root, hit second square root, and then just type in that number that you just had on your calculator right there. Some of you may have to write it down. The bigger calculators will have it right there, and you don't really have to write it down.
13.5.
Anybody else get 13.5?
Yeah.
So how long is little a?
13.5.
13.5. So again, the hardest thing for this whole thing, because your calculator is going to do most all the work for you, the hardest thing is you have to write this out. If you don't write that out on your paper so that you can see it and type it into your calculator, you're probably going to get lost. That's if you're finding a side. Fill in what you need to fill in on this. Finding an angle, a little tougher.
How did we go from 182 to?
Took the square root.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So you just, so on like your calculator, you might want to write that number down, 182.2576 or something. And then just hit second square root and type that back in. Yeah, it's that one. Yep, 182.2576. So if you're finding a angle instead of a side, a little tougher. Label the triangle, write out the formula with the angle. So when you write out the formula, it's going to look something like this. Whatever equals whatever, 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 whatever. And then when you get way out here to the end, it's going to say cosine of angle Q, or whatever angle it is that you're looking for. So this time your variable is going to be on the right-hand end instead of the left-hand side. If you're finding a side, your variable is going to be over here. If you're finding an angle, your variable is going to be way over there. Then, this is where it gets a little tougher, because you have to, there's no easy way to do this. You have to work it out this way. Notice I have some of these in red. I know it's not in red on your paper, so you might want to underline these things and each of those parts. First you find a squared, write that answer down. Then you find b squared plus c squared, write that answer down. Then you find 2 times b times c, write that answer down in your formula. Then you're going to have something that looks like this. 100 equals 256 minus 243 times the cosine of a.
Okay, so then you subtract.
Then you subtract this number from both sides. Notice when we subtract 256 from 100, what's it end up giving you? Not that answer.
Negative 156.
Negative 156. Then you're going to divide by whatever that number is. So you subtract this first number, then divide both sides by that number. Yeah, question?
So, wait, no, explain that again.
So it's just like solving this. So if we had this, 5 equals 3 minus 2x.
Okay.
What would you do first?
Add 3.
Not add the 3.
Subtract 3.
Subtract the 3. You end up with 2 equals negative 2x.
Yeah.
And then the next step would be to do what?
Divide 'em.
Divide both sides by the negative 2, and that would give you x, right? So you're doing the same thing here. You're subtracting this number, and then dividing by that number.
Okay. So do you subtract that from house?
No, you subtract it from
Just the first.
the other side. So every time, just like solving this equation, every time you're splitting it up there at the equal sign, and you're trying to move everything from this side over to this side to get the variable by itself. And the variable this time is that cosine of A. Once you have that, you have something like 0.6420 equals the cosine of A. Just like all the other times that we've been dealing with sine, cosine, or tangent, next thing you gotta do is you gotta hit second on your calculator. So you hit second cosine, punch that in, and it'll tell you the angle. Draw this, get my triangle, looks like what kind of triangle this time?
A right
A
triangle.
right triangle. Does that mean it is a right triangle? Fill this in the space on your notes there that I left you. What am I gonna put on this corner? What letter?
A, big A,
How about this?
big B,
This one?
big C.
Does it really matter which one goes where?
No.
No. That's supposed to be a B. Little a is 11. Where's that go? Left, right, or bottom?
Right.
Right? So put 11 right there. Little b is 10. Where's that go? Bottom. Little c is 12. Where's that go? Notice this time, we know all three sides. We don't know any of the angles. So we have to use law of cosine. We set up our equation. We're trying to find angle B this time. So when I start my equation, I'm going to start out at this end. So we want the cosine of B to be at the far right.
So we gotta find A squared.
Yeah, we got to set up our equation first. All right? So if big B is out here on the far right, what letter has to be over here on the far left? They got to be the same. So if this is big B, this has to be what? Little b. So little b goes right there. So you got your b's in there. What's going to go next over here?
C.
C. So we could do c squared plus, then what?
2BC.
What's the other letter that we're missing?
A.
A squared minus 2 times,
B times C.
now be careful.
Uh,
It's got to be the same as these two.
C.
So times C times A. Does everybody see how that's different now because we're finding B instead of A? So that switches where your letters go. Now we can plug in our numbers. Do we know little b?
No.
10?
10.
So 10 squared. Do we know little c?
11 squared.
Close.
12 squared.
12 squared. Now Jacob turned around A and C. Is that going to confuse anybody? Does it really matter which order these two went in? No, so usually we put A before C, right? But doesn't make any difference. What's little a this time? So plus 11 squared minus 2 times, what's little c? 12 times, what's little a? 11 times the cosine, do we know big B?
No.
No, that's what we're trying to find. How many variables in that whole equation, this big long formula that I have here? 1. That's what we want, just one variable. And that variable either has to be here, on this end, like that first problem that we did, or here, like in this one. Now is where it gets a little tough, because you gotta do it part at a time, and there's no, I wish there was an easy way to tell you how to do this. There isn't. First thing you do, find this, what's 10 squared? 100, so write down 100 right there. Then you're going to grab your calculator and type all that right there in. 12 squared plus 11 squared.
265.
So we write that down. Then we're going to do this part. So this was part 1, that's part 2, part 3 is these 3 things. 2 times 12 times 11. What is it?
2 times 12 times 11.
Yep.
Right? 44.
Don't sound right.
Don't sound right to me either. Oh, I put 2 instead of 12.
132.
132, anybody else get that? Yes, no, maybe?
Well, that was just 12 times 11, then we do the 2 again, right?
Yep.
Alright.
264.
Yeah, I got 264 too.
That's my bad.
264?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And that still times the cosine of B. When you get to this point, no easy way around it. You have to write it down on your paper so that you can see it. Otherwise, you're gonna get confused somewhere.
So we get the one from the middle, we subtract? No.
So, well, hold on. Once we have that, now we're just solving it like a normal equation. Forget cosine of B is here, if that was just an X. You would subtract this part first and then divide by this number, right?
Yeah.
And that's our next 2 steps. So first thing we're gonna do, subtract 265 on both sides.
Negative 160.
Negative 165, everybody agree with that? These cancel out, what's left on this other side? Be careful.
negative 264 times 270.
Write that down. So that's the first step once you're starting to solve it. We're multiplying, our variable is this whole cosine of B. Don't let that word confuse you, it's just a variable. Cosine of B. We're multiplying that by negative 264. So if you're multiplying it by negative 264, how do you undo that?
Divide it.
Divide it by negative 264. Divide this side by negative 264. These over here cancel out. What's left on the right-hand side?
Cosine of B.
Just cosine of B, and we really don't need those parentheses anymore. Now on the left-hand side, what's a negative divided by a negative every time?
Positive.
Positive. And what's it come out to be?
0.65.
0.65.
Even?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll put another 0 there, because usually we go out 4 places. Are we finished? Did that give us our answer? We know the cosine of B is that, so now on our calculators, we're going to tell the calculator that we're looking for an angle. So what do we hit? What button do we hit first? Second button. So you hit second, cosine, and type that in.
51.3.
And if it's an angle, we're going to round off to what?
The nearest degree.
Nearest degree. So about
51.
51 degrees. That's our angle.
So wait.
Angle B right here is 51 degrees. So you hit second, cosine, and then type in that decimal. And then hit equals. What did it tell you?
Not the right answer.
All right, so hit your math button.
Yep.
Third one down. Is it on degrees or radians? Oh, I'm sorry. Is it the math button? No, it's not the math button. Is it?
Mode.
Hit the mode button. Jeez.
Where's, mode?
And the third one down. Is it on degrees or radians?
It was on degrees.
That's what we want. So now go back and try it again. It should be. So second cosine,
Second cosine.
0.6250.
It's 2.
Hit equals.
It gave me like 0.023. I don't know what that
No, hold on. Get clear. You're not hitting second. Second button's up here.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Yep. Let it work through something. Your assignments, this packet, come up and grab it. We're going to work as many of them as we can before you leave. Again, or not packet, it's just a worksheet. Again, I don't want this worksheet back. Everything's gotta be done on a separate sheet of paper. So get out a separate sheet of paper. We'll start working problems. I don't care how you work them. Have your calculators out so that you can help me. We can get them as quickly as possible. I'd say in 28 minutes, we probably get it done.
Friday, or since we're not gonna have your class, we're gonna have it Monday?
No, they're not switching stuff that way. This one, on this packet, there's 17 again, we'll do any 10. So,
That's one.
any 10 problems, you have to do the word problem. So that has to, 17 has to be one of them. And I think I want to do this. On questions 9 through 12, the first sentence says, determine whether you're using law of sines or law of cosines. Mark out everything after that. So we're just on those, we're just deciding if we're using law of sines or law of cosines. So mark out the whole second sentence there as far as the directions go. It says solve the triangle. We're not going to do that on those. So those four, we're just going to decide whether it's law of sines, law of cosines. So pick me a problem.
Well, those look easy, so let's do 9.
You want to do 9? Just do the easy ones first. So 9, first thing you need to do, draw yourself a little triangle. What letters are we using?
A, B, and C.
So what goes here? Here? See there? What parts do we know?
Little A.
So little a is where? Left, right, or bottom?
Right.
What else?
Little B is 18, that's on the bottom.
And
C is 19 on the left.
so we know 3 sides this time. We're using law of sines or law of cosines?
Cosine.
Law of cosine. You know all 3 sides, you have to use law of cosines. So that's your answer.
Okay, is that done?
Yep.
All right, then
10. Drawing the same triangle again.
10.
Same letters, A, B, and C.
Yep.
What'd they tell us this time?
Measure angle C is 38.
So angle C is right here, that's 38. What else?
A is 6.
Little a is 6, left to right or bottom?
Right. Little b is 19 on the bottom.
So we got a side, another side, and the angle that's between those 2 sides. Law of sines or law of cosines? Law of cosines again. We doing 11?
Yeah.
Same triangle.
Mm-hmm.
So A, B, and C. What parts do they tell us this time?
Measure angle B equals 49.
What else?
The measure of little a is 17 on the right. Measure of little b, or the length of little b is 22 on the bottom. And they don't tell us.
That's all they tell us?
Yeah.
All right, so remember these two, these are, if you know all 3 sides or 2 sides and the angle in between those 2 sides, that's when you have to use law of cosines. Is this one of those setups?
No.
So what do you have to use? Law of sines.
This is same thing for,
It is.
I think.
Same picture, A, B, and C again.
Yeah.
It is a lot.
What'd they tell us?
Little A is 15.5.
So is that left, right, or bottom?
Right.
15.5?
Yeah. Little B, which is the bottom, is 18. And the measure of angle C is 72.
17?
72.
Oh, 72.
That'd be low. Low cosine.
So you got this side, you got this side, you got the angle in between them, so law of
Cosine.
cosines.
Okay, do you wanna do one now?
I don't care which one.
Wait, are we allowed to ask for the word problem?
Yeah.
Can we
Want me
get
to
the
do?
word problem?
Sure.
Everybody got that much?
Yeah.
I know you heard me say it has to be on a separate sheet of paper, right? Alright, just wanna make sure. I don't want you to be mad at me next time when I hand your paper back to you and say I'm not accepting this.
That whole breakdown I just turned in, can I like not turn it in yet? Do it?
Today's, yeah. Good grab. So 17, is that the one we're doing?
Yeah.
The Esposito family purchased a triangular plot of land on which they plan to build a barn and a corral. Does everyone know what a corral is?
Yeah.
Holds animals, holds horses, cows, so it's a fence. Stable is more like an inside thing. A corral is like a
Fenced in area.
fenced-in area outside where the cattle grazes and stuff like that. The lengths of the sides of the plot are 320 feet, 286 feet, and 305 feet. What are the measures of the angles formed by each side? What are we gonna draw here?
Triangle.
Draw a triangle. Does it really matter what we label our,
Triangle, no.
so let's pick some letters. Don't pick A, B, C. Let's try something different. Stick A, B, C.
X, Y, Z.
X, Y, Z. So we'll call that X, that Y, that Z. What'd they tell us about our triangle?
The lengths of the sides of the plot are 320 feet.
So 320, where's that go?
X, Y, I guess.
Here?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
What else they tell us?
286 feet.
Where's that go?
You choose next.
I guess in the highlights.
Bottom? 286?
And then 305.
So where's that go?
Y, Z.
Does it really matter?
Nope.
No, it makes no difference. Now, from here on out, is it gonna matter?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing's gotta match up. So we made the 320, what variable?
Z.
Little z, right? We made the 286,
Little y.
little y, and we made the 305,
Little
little
x.
x. They want us to find,
The angle.
they want us to find all the angles.
Yeah.
So first thing we gotta do is pick one of the angles, whichever one we wanna find first.
Let's do little Y.
Little y. So we're gonna pick this angle. All right? Or big Y, actually. So we're gonna pick big Y there. When we set up our formula, it's gonna look something like this. Out here on this end, it's gonna be the cosine of big Y.
And then
If we have that way over there on the left, what variable has to go over here?
Little y squared.
Little y squared. Well, what's little y this time?
286.
Should I put them in here, write them in? So that's little y, what's this one again?
little X.
Little x, and this one is
Little Z.
little z. So 286 squared. Then, if that's little y, the other two, x and z, are the parts that go in here. So what am I gonna write next?
305 squared.
305 squared plus
Z is what? 320?
320 squared
And then
minus 2 times, what was this number?
305.
So that goes there. What was this number?
320.
So So that goes there. Everybody with me to that point? Now, this is sort of a hard problem just because the numbers are so big. All right? Once we have that, we're looking for an angle this time, so that makes it the one that's even harder. What we're gonna do, I'd love to tell you guys how to do this just on your calculator, but I don't know. Do you guys think you could handle it if I just tell you how to do it on your calculator?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Without writing all of it down every time, or should I go through it? How about if we do this one on the calculator, then the next one,
We write through it.
we write it down?
Yeah.
All right?
Sounds good.
No.
All right, because these are so big. So if I'm doing this on my calculator, this is what I do. Because I know I'm gonna subtract off this part. And then I'm gonna do what with this part? Divide by it. So if I'm doing this on the calculator, please, you gotta make sure that you're doing it correctly, otherwise it's gonna give you the wrong answer and you're gonna be all confused. And if that comes out and you get the wrong answer and it's saying error or something, then go back and do it out the long way. If I'm doing this on my calculator, I type in this number. So type that in, 286 squared. Does everybody have that?
Yes, sir.
Then hit minus, and then you're gonna type in parentheses, 305 squared plus 320 squared, close the parenthesis, and hit equals.
Okay.
Negative 113.
Are we, yeah. So 286 squared minus, then put all this in parentheses and type it into your calculator just that way.
Okay.
Is everybody with me to that point?
Yep.
Once you have, did you hit equals?
Yes.
Don't hit it again because they'll probably do something else stupid. So hit equals and then hit divided by, and this time it's gonna be tough to type in. You hit divided by, then hit the negative 2 times 305, no, back up, because I messed up.
Okay.
Hit divided by,
Okay.
put a parenthesis
Right where the negative is?
before the negative. So put a parenthesis, then hit negative 2 times 305 times 320, then close the parenthesis.
Then close it. Do I hit enter?
Then hit enter.
Okay.
And what's it tell you?
0.5821157787.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Now, is that our answer?
No.
What do we have to hit on our calculator?
Second.
Second, cosine, and type that number in. And remember, since we're finding angles, we're gonna round it off to the nearest degree.
54.
54.
54, what's
Yep.
54 degrees?
Big one.
So this angle right here is 54 degrees, that's one of our answers.
So.
Now, do we wanna go, we gotta find X and Z, we gotta find these other two angles. Do we wanna go through all that headache again?
No.
It's probably gonna be easier to use what now? Law of,
Sin.
so right, sine,
I
sine,
don't know what's it.
which angle are we gonna pick? We only know one.
Y.
So what is it?
54.
So we'll put sine 54 over, what's it match up to?
286.
That goes on bottom. Then you gotta decide which other angle you wanna find next.
Guess we'll do
X.
X.
Yeah.
So let's find sine X, and what's that match up to?
305.
305. Now we go back to our calculators again. Remember, when you write this down, you write 305 times
Sine
sine of 54 equals, going this way,
286 times the sine of x.
286 times the sine of x. What do you divide both sides by?
286.
About 286.
Divide that by 286, divide this by 286. Cancels, you're left with sine x equals, remember, type all the top in, hit equals, then divide it by 286, hit equals, and it's gonna give you some decimal answer.
Yeah.
Point what?
8628.
Everybody agree with that? 8628? Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah.
Now, is that our answer?
No.
Now we gotta hit what on our calculator?
Second.
Second, this time
Sin.
instead of cosine, we hit sine, so second sine, 0.86228, what's that give us?
59 or 60. If you want to round
60.
off.
60 degrees? Everybody agree with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we know two of our angles. No, this one's 60, this one's 54. How are we gonna find the third one?
Just add them up.
Add them up, subtract from 180,
Yeah.
what's that give us?
63.
63 degrees?
I don't know why I did that. I could have just looked.
So what's our three answers this time?
54, 60, and 63.
4 degrees, 60 degrees, and 63 degrees.
Why did they choose a triangle? They just decided to choose a triangle, or it doesn't seem a very good shape for
Oh,
a
for
polygon.
it must have been the
Why
problem.
does that only
Said
add
it-
up to 177?
I don't know, did we do the last one wrong?
I think the last angle's like 66.
66 degrees?
Yeah.
So this should be 66?
I was so confused, so, yeah.
66 degrees. So make sure you change that, that should be 63, it should be 66. Everybody got that much?
Mm-hmm.
Pick me another one.
Got one.
Number 1. So I don't have to keep looking at this paper. Draw our triangle, what's the letters this time?
JKO.
So little, or big J, big K, big L, what do they tell us?
Little j is 1.3.
Was that left, right, or bottom?
Right.
1.3?
1.3, yeah. Little k is 10.
So that's,
At the bottom. And then the measure of big L is 77. So we're using the law of cosine.
So, cosines.
one second. Can't have that, it looks like it's 77, right?
Yeah.
So you're using law of cosines, and what are we trying to find?
Measure of the missing side.
Missing side, so which side are we missing?
JK.
Which is what?
Little L.
Little L. I'm gonna make my little L that way, because a little L otherwise looks like a 1, we don't want that. So if I'm trying to find that, when I set up my formula,
L squared?
where's little L have to go?
Oh, wait, it's.
Left side.
Left side, right? So it's gonna be L squared, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's go ahead and plug in the numbers as we go. We got L squared over here all by itself, that's where we want the variable. What's another side?
J.
So
1.3.
So 1.3 squared plus
10 squared.
10 squared. Does everybody see where those two came from?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the other two sides squared minus 2 times, don't make this harder than it is, the things that go in these two parentheses, exact same two things you wrote down here.
1.3
So
and 10.
1.3 and 10 times the cosine, here you gotta be careful here. We got little l over here, so what has to be on this end?
Big L.
Big L. Well, we know big L, what is it?
77.
So it goes cosine of 77.
We can put that whole thing in our calculator.
Now what you do, once you have that written down, you're just gonna type that, just like it is, everything right in your calculator, Remember, on your calculator, when you get to here, you may have to put a double parenthesis there at the end because it puts a parenthesis in for you when you hit cosine. So just type it in, just like that, parentheses and all. Does everybody's calculator in here?
Do I have to write a parenthesis before cos?
Yes.
Okay.
Does everybody's calculator put a parenthesis in when you hit
Yeah.
cosine?
Yeah.
So I'll start doing that. Every time it's gonna be
I got
parenthesis there that the calculator puts in, and you're gonna have to put in that second one.
I got 96.
96, anybody else get 96?
Yeah.
Now, is that our answer?
No, it takes square root.
That's what L squared is. So what do you do to solve it?
Take square root.
Take square root. Somebody take square root of 96.
9.8.
9.8, anybody else get that?
Yeah.
So how long is that missing side?
9.8.
9.8.
Which does make sense.
You wanna do one more?
Yep.
2.
Let's pick a different one, because 2's going, it's just find the side, so.
Let's
Let's do one of them in that second set where you got find an angle.
do 6.
6? So finding an angle. This time I'm actually gonna do it out longhand. If you wanna try to do it out on your calculator like we did a second ago, that's fine, go right ahead. We'll draw the triangle. What's our letters this time?
M, N, and Q.
M, N, Q. Somebody tell me the numbers.
The little M is 24.
So that's over here.
No, little n is 28
Where's that go?
at the bottom, and little q is 34. And we're trying to find the measure of angle big M.
Big M, so we're
Yeah.
finding this. So when I set up my formula here, and I'm gonna do this one sort of quickly. I set up my formula, we're finding big M, so that's gonna be out here on the right-hand side. Then I'm gonna come back over here. If big M's out here, little m's gotta be over here. So that's 24, right? So
Yeah.
24 squared. Then we want one of the other two, it doesn't really matter. We'll do 34 squared plus 28 squared minus 2 times 34 times 28. That's your formula. Somebody help me out. I know you guys are probably all using your calculator and stuff, but somebody tell me what is 24 squared?
576.
I don't know.
Equals, somebody type all that into their calculator and tell me what that is.
1,940.
Minus, somebody type in 2 times 34 times 28.
1,904.
1,904,
Yeah.
and that's still times the cosine of it. So you do this first, this second, that third, write each of those answers down just like that. Next thing I'm gonna do, 1940, I'm gonna subtract it on both sides. Somebody do 576 minus 1940 for me.
Negative 1,364.
These cancel out, you're left with, on this side, it's not a z, that's an equal sign. Negative 1904 times the cosine of m.
We divide by negative 1,904.
Divide both sides by that negative 1904. These cancel out, and that leaves you with cosine of m on that side equals some decimal answer on this side.
0.7164.
Are we finished?
No.
What do you gotta do next?
Second cosine.
Hit second, cosine, and then type that in.
44.2.
So.
44.
44 degrees, so measure of angle M is
44 degrees.
44 degrees. This way's not all that much harder, it's just more writing. If you can figure it out on your calculator, and if you tried to do it just on your calculator there, as long as you got the same answer, you should be fine, as long as you continue to do it the same way. The bad thing is, if you type all this in on your calculator, do you know if you're getting the right answer or not?
No,
So it might be better to work it out some of the times. Because this isn't, you're just finding this, typing that into your calculator, typing that into your calculator, writing that down, subtracting this number on both sides, and then dividing by this number on both sides. And I would even say if you get to this point, and you know that you're gonna subtract off this number, you could just hit 576 minus that, and then hit divided by a negative 1904, and sort of skip from here down to that point right there. That's fine also. So any 10 problems, again, they have to be on a separate sheet, can't be on that sheet.